Can you get a home theater experience that is wider and more immersive than a soundbar without spending hours crawling around in your attic running speaker cables? Today, I've got 3 wireless surround sound in a box setups from Hisense, Valerion, and Sony, and I'm going to be comparing them to my higher end 5.1.4 ELAC and Marantz setup to see which one is the best. And I'm going to show you why these might be a great option for you, especially if you use a projector. Starting with the least expensive option in this video, the Hisense HT Saturn retails for $9.99 and comes with 2 wireless front speakers and 2 identical wireless rears, each with a woofer tweeter combo for the horizontal front and rear channels, and then a smaller upward firing woofer for height effects. But instead of making up a 4.1.4 system, the front and rear speakers on each side combine their upward firing channel to make a single height channel, making it just 4.1.2. The Hisense HT Saturn also comes with a single wireless 6.5-inch ported subwoofer, and everything connects via a single box, which is part of the magic for projector users since you can put this right next to your projector and connect it with a single short HDMI cable right into the eARC port. And in addition to eARC, the Hisense also has optical in for older systems and an HDMI 2.0 input for video pass-through. And the HT Saturn also supports Bluetooth 5.3. Next, also for $9.99 for the base system, is the Valerion Thunderbeat 4.1.2 system that shares a lot in common with the Hisense. The Valerion Thunderbeat has 4 identical wireless speakers, 2 for the front and 2 for the rear, and each of them has a woofer tweeter combo for the horizontal channels. And then each speaker has a single woofer for the height, and also like the Hisense, the Valerion Thunderbeat combines the front and rear speakers for a single height channel per side, making it a 4.1.2 system. The Thunderbeat comes with a long, skinny ported subwoofer, and the cloth cover might suggest that you're getting a large 10-inch driver here, but in reality, it's just the same 6.5-inch driver as in the Hisense. However, unlike the Hisense, the Valerion also has an optional wireless center channel available for $299 that makes it a more traditional 5.1.2 system, and for reasons that I'll cover a little bit later, I don't think that the center channel is really optional here, so the actual price of this system is $1,298. Also different from the Hisense, the Valerion Thunderbeat uses a more dongle-style wireless receiver with a built-in HDMI cable to attach to your projector or TV's eARC port, and the only other ports are a 3.5mm aux-in port and a 2.5mm output for connecting your own third-party wired and powered center channel. But I didn't test that since I think it kind of defeats the purpose of these wireless systems, and again, like the Hisense, the Valerion also supports Bluetooth 5.3 input. And last, the most expensive wireless option in this video is the $2,698 Sony Bravia Quad surround system that doesn't come with a subwoofer at all. So if you want decent bass, you are all but required to buy either the Sony SW3 or the Sony SW5 separately. And to give it the best possible sound, I paired it with the SW5 for an additional $698, making this system about 3 times more expensive than the others at $3,396 total. And for that price, you get 4 identical wireless speakers, each with 4 drivers, 3 that support the horizontal channels, and 1 upward firing driver for the height channel. But unlike the other 2 systems, Sony doesn't really disclose whether they're trying to emulate a 4.1.2 system or a 4.1.4 system, and instead they focus on their 360-degree sound field that relies on digital sound processing and room correction that you complete using the Bravia Connect app and your phone's microphone. The optional SW5 subwoofer is substantially larger and heavier than the Hisense and Valerion subwoofers, but it has a similar-sized front-facing driver that measures about 7 inches, but instead of using a ported enclosure, the SW5 has a passive driver on the bottom, and these drivers are sometimes referred to as bass reflex drivers. The Bravia Quad's connection box is also quite a bit bigger than its 2 competitors and includes an eARC port, a wired Ethernet connection, an HDMI 2.1 input, and an S-channel out in case you want to use your compatible Sony TV as a center channel. And the system that I'm going to be comparing it to is my ELAC True 5.1.4 system, which costs $3,367 for the speakers, and then I'm using it with a Marantz 7011 AVR that I happened to snag off of Facebook Marketplace for $200, but it retailed for over $2,000 in 2017. So my reference system is quite a bit more expensive than even the Bravia Quad, and it's also worth noting that I've got a little over $100 just in speaker wire, and I spent about 8 hours crawling through my attic and cutting holes in my ceiling and walls to install it. So it's definitely not an apples to apples comparison with the ease of use of these wireless systems. But to judge each system, I'm going to play various test clips and actual movie scenes to rank each system on their vocal clarity, front soundstage width and separation, surround effects, height effects, and bass response to figure out which one is the best all-around wireless setup, and I should mention that the scenes are a mix of Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, Dolby 7.1, and Dolby 5.1, which are all fully supported by all of these systems. And before watching any content on them, I ran a volume normalized frequency response test for each system, and that looks like this. And the key takeaways here are that the ELAC system is tuned with Odyssey to provide a flatter response with no major peaks versus the Sony, Hisense, and Valerion systems that emphasize specific frequencies for a more punchy, exciting sound that is achievable on less expensive hardware. And as I mentioned before, the Valerion system without the optional center channel was a total mess in terms of frequency response with a ton of peaks and dips. And as you can see, those are corrected by adding the center, so I don't think that adding that center channel is really optional. And if we take a look at their bass response on the left side of the chart, the ELAC 12-inch subwoofer starts to roll in around 16 Hz and reaches full sound pressure at 22 Hz. While the smaller drivers from the wireless subs don't come in strong until after 30 Hz, and then they compensate for that by emphasizing the mid-bass, which still gives you a boomy sound that you can't replicate without a subwoofer, but it doesn't have the same feel-it-in-your-bones quality as the ELAC does. Moving on to actual content, this part is going to work best if you have headphones on, and we're going to start with vocal clarity, where the center channel is usually the most important part for providing clear vocals when the ambient volume is also high. So for these clips, try to focus on how well you can understand the vocal track as well as the separation of the vocals from other ambient noises.
No, not the bike. Forget the bike. The girl. I think it's Artemis. No, not the bike. Forget the bike. The girl. I think it's Artemis.
Hang on. We gotta get low. The terrain will confuse his targeting system. Hang on. We gotta get low. The terrain will confuse his targeting system.
No, not the bike. Forget the bike. The girl. I think it's Artemis. No, not the bike. Forget the bike. The girl. I think it's Artemis.
Hang on. We gotta get low. The terrain will confuse his targeting system. Hang on. We gotta get low. The terrain will confuse his targeting system.
No, not the bike. Forget the bike. The girl. I think it's Artemis. No, not the bike. Forget the bike. The girl. I think it's Artemis.
Hang on. We gotta get low. The terrain will confuse his targeting system. Hang on. We gotta get low. The terrain will confuse his targeting system.
And here I thought the Hisense had the clearest and most separated vocals with a very convincing phantom center channel. And while I thought that the ELAC system was an improvement over the #1 ranked Hisense, it wasn't as dramatic of an improvement as I was expecting when comparing a dedicated center to a phantom center. Next, we're going to look at front soundstage width and separation, and this is the main area that these wireless systems should dominate over soundbars because they don't need to use tricks and DSP to produce a wide field. So for these clips, try to focus on the movement of sound from one side to the other. And the Hisense also took the top spot here, and the position of the objects on the screen matched exactly with the sound output. But in this case, there was a significant difference with the width of the ELAC system, where the dedicated left and right front channels created much more overall separation. Next, to judge surround effects, unfortunately YouTube is just going to play back any audio that I record in stereo, so in addition to critically evaluating each system in person, I also put a second set of stereo microphones facing behind me, and the audio that you're about to hear comes only from those microphones. And here the Hisense came out on top again with excellent directional rear audio and a great level that was impactful without being distracting. And interestingly, this was one area that I couldn't really tell much of a difference between the ELAC system and the #1 ranked Hisense. Next, to evaluate the height channels, I moved that second set of stereo microphones and I aimed them up at the ceiling over my main listening position, and this recording will use those microphones to attempt to isolate and exaggerate the height effects. And for this one, the Sony Bravia Quad took the top spot, and I think this is largely due to the room correction setup process, because I think that my rear speaker placement is further back from the main listening position than in most rooms, and as a result, the Sony seemed to have the height effects coming from above me, while the Hisense and Valerion height effects were more behind me. And in this case, the ELAC system that has 4 ceiling-mounted dedicated two-way height speakers absolutely blew away all the wireless systems that are forced to bounce the height channel off the ceiling and hope for the best. And last, here are some clips to judge the subwoofer and low bass performance. And the Sony SW5 rightfully took first place here, as it really should, since it cost 2/3 the price of the other systems just by itself. But it was nice to see it perform up to that level. However, my ELAC Varo PS350 is only $150 more than the SW5, and it steps up from a 7-inch driver all the way to a 12-inch driver, and the difference in the fullness and feel of the bass response is night and day. And it's even more significant than the difference between the Sony SW5 and the included subs from Valerion and Hisense. And then there's also one last quality of a good sound system that I think is the culmination of all the other categories. And Sony calls it their 360-degree sound field, and I've heard other people call it the audio audio bubble, but for me, it's when a set of speakers can produce a sound that appears to come from everywhere instead of a single point location. And the two scenes that I'm going to play here for this are from Dune 2, where the sound makes it feel like the room is 10 times bigger than it actually is, and Top Gun Maverick, where it seems like the background music is playing from an entirely different sound system from the planes, guns, and vocals.
Chance, you can do this! Come on, Maverick.
And for reasons that I don't fully understand, Sony, which is usually the king of 360-degree sound bubbles, came in unquestionably last here. And the Hisense, the most budget system, was frankly incredible. Good enough that this was my reaction after the last Top Gun clip.
That was really good. Huh. Okay.
Now, did it beat out my ELAC system with 4 dedicated height channels and a 12-inch sub? Of course not. But for the money, the setup time, and the size, I was almost speechless. And I'm gonna preface this by saying that it's possible that my room just happened to be perfect for the acoustics of the Hisense, but I was beyond impressed. So now let's talk about the bad stuff. And first, the most common complaint with these wireless systems is congestion and speaker dropout. And these have been widely reported in other reviews, especially with the older Sony HT-A9 system. And during my testing, I experienced dropout specifically on the Valerion system. But it turned out to be 100% my fault, and I had left the Bravia Quad on while the Valerion was trying to connect, which of course caused signal congestion and dropouts. But when testing them one at a time, I didn't have any speaker connection issues at all. But interestingly, the wireless speakers had a pretty large impact on the range of my computer's wireless mouse that's usually about 15 feet away from the CPU. So if you're using a home theater PC with a wireless mouse and keyboard, these systems might cause unexpected issues for you. Second, I have a growing concern that not necessarily these systems, but systems like them are going to be used to lock consumers into a specific brand ecosystem. For instance, the Sony Bravia Quad has their S-channel out port to be able to connect certain Sony TVs as a center channel. Hisense has high concerto mode that can use certain Hisense TVs and projectors as the center, and AWOL has a version of the Thunderbeat that can use the AWOL ultra short throw projectors as the center channel. But as you've seen in this video, all of these systems worked perfectly fine with my micro LED. But TCL recently released their Z100 system with Dolby Flex Connect, and it only works if you have a compatible TCL TV, which not only locks you into the current TCL ecosystem, but it also prevents you from switching brands down the road if you want to keep using your sound system, and I think that is a pretty dangerous path to go down. So with that said, now it is conclusion time, and the Hisense HT Saturn is not only the lowest price system, but it also finished first or second in every category, and this may be a controversial take, but I actually liked it better than the Bravia Quad in most content. And that also made me curious to try out the high concerto mode using Hisense's $6,000 L9Q projector, which also has a sound system tuned by DVLA, and it was frankly terrible. And the L9Q's speakers sounded worse than the Phantom channel that was produced by the HT Saturn alone. And adding the L9Q speakers absolutely ruined the front soundstage separation, so if you get the HT Saturn, there's definitely no need to get FOMO about using high concerto mode. The Sony Bravia Quad with its SW5 subwoofer also sounds pretty good, and I really don't think that most people would find many faults with it. But while the Hisense HT Saturn is a $1,000 system that sounds more like a $2,000 system, the Bravia Quad is a $3,400 system that sounds sort of like a $2,000 system. And I would say that if you just love Sony products, or if you have a really strange room with terrible speaker placement, the Bravia Quad with its room correction and DSP may work for you, but in most cases, the Hisense is a better option, not only in terms of value, but also sound quality. And last, the Valerion Thunderbeat system was pretty disappointing to me, and while I think it had the best aesthetics, and I liked the wireless dongle that you can hang from the back of your projector, it had several deal-breaking issues, including a subwoofer that regularly overplayed its hand, causing clipping and distortion, massively varied volume levels between PCM 2.0 and Dolby Audio formats, and a $299 add-on center channel that's basically required to fill in gaps in the frequency response curve, but does not look, feel, or sound anywhere near what I would expect from a nearly $300 speaker. As always, there are no sponsored reviews on this channel, but I do have links down in the description for all the speaker systems in this video, and as always, I appreciate when you use those links, since as an Amazon affiliate, I do earn a small commission on the sale at no cost to you. I'd also like to thank all of my awesome patrons over at Patreon for their continued support of the channel, and if you're interested in supporting the channel, please check out the links down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and as always, thanks for watching The Hookup.